everybody there's a shortcut to the bar.
Just
Trina,
do you want to get back in there?
It's right
Trina
here.
always knows the way
The
to the
shortcut
bar.
to the bar is right here.
Everybody, come on, we're going to get started. Come on up, please. Don't be shy.
Want a glass of wine?
Don't be shy. Please hold your dice while we're doing the lecture. We're streaming. I appreciate it.
Anybody would like a glass of wine? Then my refill, I guess, would be on you.
I want to warn you all that we are streaming live and we're being recorded and it'll be posted on YouTube. So only say very nice things about me during the lecture. After the lecture, say what you want. My name is Phil Simborg. I'm one of the principals of the Gammon Learning Center. We have 15 teachers, including Mochi, Michi, Sticks, John O'Hagen, Dennis Culpepper, some of the best players and teachers in the world. And we have put together a great group. We do teaching by the internet. We use 8 different languages. David Presser in Hebrew, Fernando Newmark in Spanish, Stick in French, go on and on. That's not what the lecture's about, but I want you to know about it. And today I'm going to cover the cube, my very favorite shortcuts to the cube. And I'm going to show you what I've learned over 20 years of teaching and 50 years of playing and 40 years of study. And it really has made me a top beginner player using these strategies. And maybe if you work on it, you can do better as well. I want to tell you we are sponsored today by P40 boards. If you haven't seen a P40 board, you must be blind because we have dozens of them around this room, and all the streaming is being done on these boards. It's a revolutionary, great board. They have some prizes that they've donated, and they've also helped pay for the streaming for this tournament. I want to say one quick thing about the tournament. This is one of my favorite tournaments in the world. It's very, very well run. Jeb and Robin and their staff and their kids are incredible. And I also want to say the USBGF is largely responsible for the success of this tournament. There are 81 people in this tournament. 74 are members of the USBGF. If you are watching this video and you're not a member of the U.S. Backgammon Federation, go to www.usbgf.org. Do I have it right, Karen? And join. There are tremendous discounts, benefits. You'll stay in touch with everything that's going on. The USBGF has added money. There's a picture being posted shortly of Jeb Horton, who's the tournament director, with all the novice players. There's a lot of new players coming into this game, and the USBGF is giving them free membership for 6 months. I talked with Julius Hyde. We're going to really work hard on the mentor program so that every new member is welcomed and shown the way around and given some free help and lessons and everything else. It's a program that we started years ago that's really important and has added money for these tournaments. It's really helping promote the game. Join that wonderful organization that's run by and for the players. That's enough about the USBGF. And now the boot camps is also a sponsor. I'm going to be calling on people, and people can answer randomly. I know there are open and intermediate and beginner players in this room. I'm going to make sure we spread the prizes evenly between open and intermediate. But if you answer a question correctly without shouting it out by calling you on it, or you raise your hand, Marcy's going to put your name down. It's going to go into a drawing, and there'll be a couple of free half-price discounts to boot camps. If you don't know about boot camps, there's brochures here. Boot camps before the Cyprus tournament, the Las Vegas tournament, and New York and Washington, D.C. The day before the tournament, we're going to have Mochi and myself, Dennis Culpepper. Falafel's going to help out. Ben Friesen and my son are going to work with beginners, and we're going to do a pre-evaluation test. And then when we get people in the room, the first thing we're going to do is Mochi's going to tell his secrets to how he prepares for tournaments. What is his method of preparing for tournaments and sharpening his game? And you'll see that there's a reason he's the #1 player in the world. And I think the number 17 player, Victor Ashkenazi, is here. Victor just walked. I'm just kidding with Victor. He's #2 according to the BMAB rankings, and he was here a second ago. I was just giving him a little shtick, which is my favorite thing to do to anybody. But like Ali was here, you can tell him he missed out on getting hit a little bit. But these boot camps are incredible. You can go to www.dlcbootcamps.com to sign up, but there will be some half-price discounts for that. P40 is going to be giving away some doubling cubes. They're beautiful aluminum doubling cubes. They slide open to hold your dice. And also we've come up with a new product, which are chouette cubes, a little bit smaller cubes. We have 12 different colors, so everybody can have their own color. We're going to be giving away some sets of these, not one cube. You'll get a set of 4 for your chouette. I don't know if you've seen our new dice scrambler. It's an incredible thing. Even at O'Loughlin to put this one together. You just take it apart like that and goes together like that. And fits in your board. This will be one of the prizes later, and it's coming out soon. We got a whole bunch of great products. Go to the website. It's an amazing product, and I'm very proud to be associated with P40 because you're going to see. We're not just out there selling products. We're supporting the game and putting back a lot of stuff in the game. You're seeing it at this tournament. You'll see it at other tournaments. Also, we have a new product that just came out, an automatic dice roller. And I know we're not trying to replace dice. It's fun to shake and roll the dice. That's great. But if you have a problem with your site, if you listen carefully, this will also 4-4. 6-5. Yankee Chan loves this. He's a blind player, as you know. And if this thing gets perfected, and we can prove that it works really well, and I think we've already done that, but we're going to go out and start an organization to reach out to people with sight impairments all over the world to bring them in the back end with this tool. This is also fun on the airplane, on the beach, elsewhere. And if you go to my streaming site, you'll see that I played several preliminary matches with this. You can't believe how good this is when you're streaming and you're watching somebody streaming to know what the dice are saying. And for electronic transcription machines, and I'm working on a major one right now with my partners, it will be incredible to read the dice and for all of us. And a few of us getting older, Ed, you insisted on having the actual numbers shown, and we changed it just for Ed O'Loughlin so that we can show the numbers. This is the Ed O'Loughlin app, where it shows the 6-5 this way, so that you don't have to have any problem reading the dots. Now, it's only on Android. It's free, but if you get the upgraded Pro one, it costs $5. Upgrade it, go to Android, upgrade it for $5. Come show me, and I'll give you $5, courtesy of P40. And it'll be out on the iPhone, and I want you to beta test it and help us out with it, and then it'll be on iPhone soon. Enough about the sponsors. Let's get into backgammon. There are 2 areas of backgammon. There's checker play and there's cube play. Which one's more important? Who the hell knows? They're both very, very important. But today we're going to talk about the cube, and over the years I've had 7 incredibly great tools that I've learned from a couple of people in this room and others that really will help you with the cube. Number 1 is if you're playing backgammon, and I don't care if you're playing for money or a match, if you don't know what you need to take to get the cube, and if you don't know what a gammon value is or gammon price is and what it's worth, then you don't even have a basis for playing this game. And if you're one of my students and you're playing in a match and you're playing me and the score is something to something, at the beginning of that game, you better be able to tell me what your take point and gammon value is, whether gammons are important because it's going to affect even your opening move checker play. So learn those values, and they're in books. You can go to Extreme Gammon, which is the best tool. They click on analysis cube information, and it tells you the take points, and then you can compute the live and the dead cube take points. Is there somebody here who can tell me what the difference is between a live and a dead cube take point? Raise your hand. You can get a big prize for answering right. All right, Jeff Hagen, first guy to try and get a prize.
Of course.
Speak up, please.
The dead cube take point means if you just take and never redouble. So in a money game, it'd be 25% in straight race.
So if your name is Carter, that never happens. You don't just take and never redouble. He always redoubles. But if it's the last roll of the game, or if you only need 2 points to win the game and somebody gives you the cube, you're never going to redouble. So that's your take point.
And then the live take point means that because you can redouble when things go your way, you can take with lower winning chance than if you just never redouble.
All right, who knows what the take point is in a money game? Dead cube take point. Jeff Horton, what is it? No! Who knows the dead cube? Dennis. 45%. Dennis Culpepper gets in the drawing. Maybe we'll invite you to boot camp. Dennis and I are going to go to Istanbul, spend a few days there, and then go on to Cyprus to do the boot camp with Mochi and Michi and others. So Maybe it'll get you a discount on the room or something if you win. What did Dennis say? 25%. If you're doubled, and this applies to many scores in the match too, if you can win the game 25% of the time, then you can take the cube, provided there's no gambles. But if it's a live cube, that's where Jeb comes in. He said 21.5. If it's that's generally, and that can float a little bit. Extreme Gammon will tell you it goes between 20 and 25. But if you need to have in that range, and 21.5 is a pretty good number that John Hagen and I came up with, doing lots and lots of rollouts and checking with XG. I can show you racing positions where there's no cube. And right at about 21.5 is what XG tells us you should take or pass in a longer race. And that's because if you have 21.5% without the cube, then holding that cube, you'll get over 25% because the cube is going to get you additional wins because you can use the cube to win the game. But you need to know these take points. And in our teaching, we teach the true effective live cube take points, which I don't think you'll find in any book that I know of, except for a couple of books from students that I had that wrote books and stole my take point chart. But these are the effective live cube take points. Everybody quickly memorize these. All right, let's go on to the next slide.
You can see them? Yeah, I can't see them.
Well, you think we're in the middle of a tournament. I'm going to have to play many of you. You think I want you to know these numbers? But the point is that, for example, let's go to the next slide. For example, in a 9-point match, you can see that it is just pretty close. Most of the take points are pretty close to that 21.5. Except if you have a lopsided score, sometimes you have a much higher take point, like 26%, the ones in red here. And sometimes you have a much lower take point, depending on the score. So you need to know that because it's going to affect how you play your checkers. It's going to affect whether or not you give the cube, whether or not you take the cube. And this is impossible for anybody but Matt Cohn-Geyer to memorize. I don't know anybody. Well, yeah, Jake Jacobs can memorize everything, but he lies. He says he knows everything, but don't believe him. But a normal person can't memorize these, but the truth is, I have them memorized for 5 away, and down. You can test me on any one of these, and any one of my students can come darn close. And there's some shortcuts and there's tricks to it to understanding when the take points are higher or lower. Robin, is it? Oh, you're doing okay. Okay. So you need to learn this. You also need to know whether or not a gammon is very, very important, or not important at all, or super important, or normal. The normal gammon value of how much a gammon is worth compared to the value of winning and losing the game in a money game is what? Somebody. Mary Higgins. 0.5. A gammon is only worth half as much. I played this game for 20 years and didn't know that. But thank God the people I was playing didn't know it either. And if you didn't know that a gammon is half as important, and I'm not going to get into the details of that because we've only got an hour today, but the point is that when you're trying to win a gammon, you better win about twice as many gammons as the number of games you might lose if you're going to gamble for the gammon. And the same thing is true if you're losing and you're trying to win the game. If you can win the game 10% more, it's worth losing 15 or 20% gammons. It's a good trade-off because the gammons are only half as much. But you also need to know if you're in a match where a gammon costs you a lot more or costs you nothing at all. So these things have to be learned as well. So tip number 1 is learn the basics. Learn the basic odds of the cube. Let's go on. Any questions, by the way, anytime, speak up. What's the cube action? For example, here's a good example of why you need to know this. This is called a 4-roll position. It's not a pure 4-roll position. A pure 4-roll position is when all the checkers are on the ace point. That doesn't come up so often, so I use this as my reference. So if red is on roll and he's thinking of doubling, who here can tell me what percentage of the time blue will win this game? See a hand? Does anybody know? I want to see a hand. I don't want to hear anybody. Barry, Sylvan. Ah, very good. He said 21.3. That's wrong. Anybody else? Ed? About a real 4-roll is right around 25. We say 25.4. 25. This one is 24.7. So this game can be won by blue a little bit less than 25%. And in a money game, can anyone tell me if this is a take or a pass? Take. It's a take. Again, if you yell it out, you're not going to get a prize. It's a take. And a 3-roll position is a pass because you only have, in this particular setup, if each one takes 2 checkers off, you only have about 19%. And there's no cube vig. It's going to be a dead cube because you can never give an effective redouble. So that's why you have to double here to avoid losing your market. Now, if the score is 6 away, 2 away, and the score is 5 away, 2 away, one of these are different. That's why you need to know. In one of these, it is right to double. In one of these, it is wrong to double. Who knows which one's right and which one it's wrong to double? Which of the two scores is it right to double? Somebody. Not you, John.
6 away.
Trina.
6 away.
It's 6 away, you say it's right to double, and at 5 away, it's wrong?
No, I would think.
At
2
5 away, 2 away, it's wrong?
Well, you said 2 away, so it's 6 away.
Well, there's two different scores we're comparing. If a player is 6 away and the other one is 2 away, or if a player is 5 away and the other one is 2 away. One of those two, it's right to double, and one is wrong to double. And I'm going to give you the prize. Put Trina down because she got it right. When you're 6 away, it's right to double because your opponent's take point is about 22%. And you will lose your market if you don't double here. And on the next roll, they would pass. And market loser theory tells you you want to double before they would pass. But at 2 away, 5 away, the take point is 17% for the leader. If you don't double here, he's going to take next time because he's got 19% and the take point 17%. How many people, raise your hand and be honest, knew this before this lecture? Marty Storer, you're such a show-off. You beat me. Now you're really making me look bad again. Put Marty Storer down because I believe in him. And he's a great player and proving why he's right. But look, great players. John Hagen, Marty Storer, Victor's an idiot, forget him. The other good players in the room know these things, and that's one of the reasons why they win more and they have lower PRs. You have to know these things. You're making a big mistake to double it 2 away, 5 away, and you're at 5 away, 2 away, and you're making a big mistake if you don't double it 6 away, 2 away. This is just one example of why you must know your take points and Gammon values. So that's tip number 1. Let's go on. Think about the cube factor before the start of every game. Again, I think I mentioned this earlier. Why do you do that? Because, let's see, today I was playing Marty and I was behind, and I think, yes, he was 2 away and I was 4 away, and I had an opening 5-1. Did I play it right, Marty?
That's debatable. I believe you did.
Okay, I slotted.
Factors besides.
I slotted. He was 2 away, I was 4 away, and I slotted with the 5-1. I would never slot with a 5-1 if it was 5 away. If it was the reverse or a normal match score, it's wrong to slot with the 5-1, 4-1. It is right to slot with the 2-1. But again, I thought about this before I even rolled the dice, and I knew what I was going to be doing, and it affects your checker play, and I didn't miss a cube. Did I give you a good cube that game?
Yes.
I gave him a great active cube, and I was gammoning the hell out of him for the match, and he played very, very well and beat me on that game. But I gave him a cube. We haven't looked at it yet, but I'm sure it was a really great cube. I had 3 checkers behind a 4 prime.
You had a lot of corrects.
Yeah, but I had a chance to blitz, and I had a chance to get gammons, and
you had good attacking chances. I had a 4-point prime and then someone checkers behind it, but you get up and get out, and I lost.
Right? There's no way I would give that cube at any other score. Because at that score, as soon as I gave the cube, if I get gammon, it's worth nothing. And I can play all out to win the gammon, because if he gets gammon, he loses the match, and he had to play more carefully. He's not even going to win the game as much because he's got to be more careful about getting gammon. So that's why I had to think about it the very first in my opening roll. I started attacking with a 5-1. So, by the way, a really great player, Joe Sylvester, lived with me for several months and gave me backgammon lessons. And one of the lessons he taught me is play like gammon go, and that's what gammon go is when you're really going for the gammon. If you're behind in the match, you don't wait till 2 away, 4 away. He plays like gammon go at 9 away, 6 away. He starts playing, and by the way, when he was doing, all the experts said he was wrong, all the bots said he was wrong. Extreme Gammon now says he was right. He was way ahead of his time, and I was lucky to have him as a teacher about 20-something years ago. And he's still a great player when he plays. So hats off to people like him. Let's go on. At 5 away, 5 away, when you're thinking, just to show you, we know the gammon value is 0.5 in a money game, in what I call normal match scores, more than 5 away, 5 away. But all of a sudden, things start changing. If somebody gives you the cube and you need 5 points, the away score, by the way, is all that matters. Let's say you're playing a match to 7 and the score is 2-2, you're 5 away, 5 away. So at those kind of scores, you need to know that the gammon value shifts, and you need to know if it's higher or lower, because you're going to double faster if it's higher, and you have chances for bless you. All right, Marcy gets a point. That was a good one. And if you have more, thanks. And if your gammon value is lower, you're gonna take more. You're gonna double the other person less. So these things are very important. Who here knows what happens if you turn the cube to 2, or you're thinking about doubling somebody? What is the gammon value at 5 away, 5 away with the cube on 2? Does anybody know that number? 0. That's wrong. It's even more important. If I turn the cube to 2, and it's 5 away, 5 away, and I gammon you, what happens to the score? I'm at Crawford. I'm at Crawford. We have an incredible rule in backgammon that if you get 1 point within 1 point of winning, your opponent can't double you for 1 game. So you've got a big advantage at Crawford. That makes the value of that gammon much more. The value of gammons at that score, John raised his hand now, because he taught a lot of this to me. John has been one of my mentors, probably my best mentor on the cube, along with Kit Woolsey and Mac Ballard, and 2 of my other great teachers. But the gammon value is 0.655. Now, why would I know a stupid number like that, and how do I apply it over the board? Because it's important to know. Even if you can't estimate gammons exactly, I just know it's about halfway between 0.5 and 1.0. So I know I'm going to double a little sooner if there's more gammons, and I'm going to be worried a little bit more if I'm getting gammon and getting the cube. So knowing these numbers is very, very critical to know. Even if you don't remember 655, I don't know how many people do that. I do it because I give lessons 4 hours a day, every day. So if I don't memorize this, I'm an idiot because I'm repeating this all the time. Mary, you had a point?
Right, it's saying that a shortcut for that is a number of
Oh.
them that are in around that 0.65 or 0.7. It's just think of it as 2/3.
Think of it as 2/3. That's exactly what I do. And if you look at my list that I have, a short list that I put up earlier, it shows the gammon value 0.7. I don't make people memorize 0.655, and I don't even make them memorize the numbers that much until they get to a higher level, just to know why it's higher. I tell a story, and by the way, John is one of the people that really taught me this. I never will say, you should do this because Extreme Gammon says so or because it's right. There's always a story and a logical reason behind it, and when you hear the story and the logical reason, that way you'll remember it and you'll be able to apply it over the board. So that's the most important thing to learn about these gammon values. Go ahead. At 2-way, 4-way, we already talked about that. The gammon value, if you turn the cube like I did with Marty, he has to worry about getting gammon. His gammon price is 1.0. My gammon value is 1.0. His gammon value is 0. It doesn't help him at all if he needs 2 points and the cube's on 2 to win a gammon. And my gammon price, it doesn't cost me at all. So I can play all out to try and win the game and not worry about gammons. 2-way, 4-way is a very sensitive score for that reason. Go ahead. At 4-way, 4-way, that's a great score. Let's say Sean was just nodding yes. If I doubled Sean and the score is 4-way, 4-way, what happens if you win a gammon with the cube on 2? You win the match. That's why a gammon value is 1.0 at that point. If you lose win a gammon, you win the match. If you win a game, you're 4 points better off than if you lost the game and you gained the 4 points. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the math right now, but that's why you need to know the gammon value is higher. So in the very opening roll, I'm thinking about if I have a good offensive position, I'm going to blitz more at that score. I'm going to try and get an anchor more at that score if I'm behind. I'm going to do different things with my checker play, even if we don't have to worry about the cube for a while. Changes your whole game. Go ahead. 5-way, 3-way, and 4-way, 3-way. This was shocking to me. I was shocked when I looked at my sheet and I looked at Extreme Gammon and saw that if you're winning, you actually can take a worse position than if you were losing. My take point is actually lower if I'm winning at these scores. Everything I've ever learned about backgammon is if you're behind in the match, you can double quicker and you have to drop faster if you're winning the match. It's not true at these scores unless there's gammons. I'm not talking about pure racing positions and gammonless positions. It's really because you forget that but when you're winning, if you can win 2 points, you either get into Crawford, or you can win the match, or you get a big, big advantage by winning 2 points. And if you lose 2 points, okay, that's bad, but it's not that bad compared to losing 1 point. So the risk-reward factor makes it even better to take the cube faster if you're winning than if you're trailing. And almost everybody I know is going to do just the opposite when they're given the cube. If you're winning, you're going to be a chicken and give away the cube more too often. And if you're trailing, you're going to give away the cube too soon, and you're going to take too often when you should be dropping. It's just the opposite at every score, except, go ahead, except the 2-way, 4-way. I'm sorry, we said that up before. 2-way, 4-way is just the opposite. The take points are pretty close. If you're the leader and you're 2 away, 4 away, and this is important to know, and you're being doubled, who knows the take point for the leader at 2 away, 4 away? Come on, Sean.
It's 19%.
19.8. You're way off.
18.6.
No, it's 19.8. It's 19.8 is your, am I right, John?
I just use 20.
20, you're way off. I can't believe that's why you're 1 and 2 this tournament so far. I'm 2 and 1 because I know it's 19.8, not 20. And the trailer's take point, who knows the trailer's take point if you're 4 away, 2 away? Sean?
It's 17.
Very good. You're wrong again. It's 18.5. And these are important things to know because, again, who the heck knows when you're looking at the position whether or not you have 17% or 18.5? I'm not asking you to be that precise. By the way, if you use the key count in any racing positions or EPC, you actually can figure these things out. And if your name is John Hagen, you can figure these things out, or Marty Storer, you can actually come up with these numbers. But even if you can't come up with these numbers, just to know about where they are is going to help your cube action and know how it changes your game. Now, 2 away cube action is critical. What do I mean by that? This is a complete lesson that I learned from John O'Hagan again. If my opponent is 2 away, don't you think it's really, really important to double at the right time and take at the right time? The whole match could be really on the line. And most people get this wrong. Let's go ahead to the next slide and we'll explain it. Here's a good example of 2 away cube action. Boy, is that blurry. I think we can fix that. 1 second. No, it's the wall.
It's the wall.
Okay, here's a money game, and I use the Keith count, and the Keith count tells you that you can double when you're over by 4. And it tells you in a money game you can take when your opponent is over by 2. If you don't know the Keith count, you need a lesson. You need to learn that. Because in racing games, it's a very, very good tool. Even though we have some new adjustments now with eyesight and everything else, it's still a great tool. But if you're over by 2, you have a higher count by 2, and that means that your opponent has a bare take. And take in a money game is 21.5, as I told you. So it's about 22% is what he has. And each point, and each one you're over, is worth another 1%. So over by 4, your opponent has about 26%. You can't read this, but in this position, blue has about 26%. And at 2 away, at this score, in a money game, you would double when you're over by 4. And if you're over by 5 or 6, you shouldn't double because you're not about to lose your market and you're giving away the cube too soon and the opponent has a real easy take. But let's say your score is 6 away, 2 away, and your opponent has a higher take point, and he has also what's called a dead cube. When you give him the cube in a money game, you're giving him power. You're giving him cube vig. He can turn that cube back in your face. If he's 2 away, there's no cube vig. He can't turn it back, and you don't want to miss your market. So you can be over by 6 in the exact same kind of position, be higher by 6, and it still be right to double. In other words, when your opponent has 30% is when you're supposed to double if he's 2 away, when his take point is 22%. John O'Hagan showed me that in Extreme Gammon said it's right. When you're over by within 8% of his take point, the computer will double. Now, I'm a little bit dumb, and I revised that a little bit. I teach wait till you're 7% because human beings make more mistakes that way. I don't lose my market always when you think you lose your market, and I get more wrong drops. But the point is to know that at 2 away scores, when you're supposed to double it, why you double sooner, know the logic of it. Every time my opponent is 2 away, I know I'm going to be doubling sooner. And also, if I'm the one who's 2 away, I know I'm going to double based on my opponent's take point. If he's 5 away, I'm going to take the cube bar. And if he's 6 or 7 away, I'm going to pass the cube bar. So the take points change, the doubling points change. You need to learn this in order to be good at match play. But if you've never played matches, some of these people watching, I'm sure, don't know what we're talking about. They strictly play for money. In fact, I know some people watching this on YouTube don't even use the cube. Number 1, learn the cube. It makes the game 5 times more fun. And learn tournament play and come to tournaments, go to your local club, join tournaments. It's 10 times more fun and exciting than just straight money game or games without the cube. But you can see we're adding a lot of complexity with the cube. Everybody here is a tournament player. We're at a tournament. And by the way, I want to thank you all for the turnout. This is one of the biggest crowds I've ever had at a lecture. Appreciate it. I think there's 3 people here. Okay, let's go on. Okay, Woolsey's Law. I was playing for I won't say how much money with my brother and a bunch of people in my real estate office and I realized that I was losing and winning more money in backgammon than I was in real estate. So I said, I'm going to be sneaky and take some lessons. I went out and bought a book first, and I didn't understand the thing in it. So I called up a bridge buddy of mine. I was a top bridge player. I was a life master. And there's this guy named Kit Woolsey. He was my first teacher. Oswald Jacoby first taught me the game in Dallas when I was just out of college. But my first teacher, I paid him $75 an hour 30 years ago, and we did everything by typing because the telephone was too expensive and there was no way to talk over the internet. We played on fibs, which was just getting started. The very first lesson Kit Woolsey taught me, Woolsey's Law, and to this day, it's one of the best things I've ever done. And anybody who has ever taken a lesson from me, if I ask you if you should double and you don't use Woolsey's Law, you hear that slap. That means I'm hitting the table like as if I was hitting you. And I got that from Jake Jacobs, who hit me over the head many, many times during our chouette whenever I did anything wrong. So Jake was very violent to me, and I learned every lesson well. So I do the same thing. Can anyone here tell me what Woolsey's Law is? Mike?
If you're not sure whether you should double or not, put yourself in your opponent's shoes, and if you're not sure if you would take or not,
Louder.
then you should probably double.
Okay, so Mike said it very well. Put it down for a prize. If you're not sure if you should double, that's your turn to double. Put yourself in your opponent's shoes and ask yourself, hit the slide, whether or not you would take or pass if you were him. Well, if you know it's a drop, if you think the other player should drop, then of course you should double, unless you're too good to double, which we all know because you have too many gammons, maybe you shouldn't double. But generally, if you think your opponent should pass, you go ahead and give the cue. If they surprise you and take, like Carter does all the time in my chouette, it's great. You just love it. But if you think it's a drop, go ahead and give the cue. Go ahead. And if you think he might drop, if you're not quite sure, that's a perfect time to give the cue. Because if you're not sure, go ahead, next one. If you're not sure whether he would take or drop either way, it's a great time to give the cue. This is an incredible, I don't care what the score is, I don't care what you're playing, this is the best tool for the cue you've ever seen. If you don't know take points, you don't know anything else, if you know Woolsey's Law, you're going to be much more of an expert at the cue. Last thing that can happen, though, there's a fourth thing that can happen. You might think that he has a take. You might say, well, if I were him, I definitely would take this cue. Well, if you think if you were him, you are sure you're going to take this cue, most people say, well, then I'm not going to double. And they're wrong. There are many times you should double, even though you're sure you should take the cue. In fact, there are two good reasons to double, even if you're sure it's a take. Can anyone give me one of those reasons?
You have too many market losers.
Mike? You have too many market losers. What's a market loser? A market loser, that's right, by the way. Okay, that's the major reason to double if you know your opponent is taking. Because if I had a Cadillac for sale, a used Cadillac, and it's worth $20,000, and I price it at $28,000, nobody's going to buy it. I lost my market. Well, if you wait to give a cue until it's too expensive for him to take it, where it cost him too much to take it, you've lost your market. He's not going to take the cue. So you can't wait that long. You'll end up winning 1 point. That's nice, but you could have won 2 points or 4 points giving the cue on time. There's another reason besides market losers that you might double if you're sure he's taking. Simon. Pardon me? I can't hear you. You increase your equity. You should give the cue when he's taken by increasing your, not if it's not a double. That's not the reason. You only increase your equity if you have too many market losers. By the way, if you don't have too many market losers and you give away the cue, all you're doing is giving him a present. If he was going to take next time, most of the time anyway, why, you're giving him a gift. If you roll badly, now he's got the cue. If you roll well, he was probably going to take anyway. So that's why it's wrong unless you have the market loser. But there is one other reason. Who knows it? John.
Well, I would guess that it's the language that you have there says that you think it's a take. Well, the opponent might think it's a pass.
All right, that's still along Woolsey's line, not what I'm looking for. Marcy?
The potential for gammon.
Pardon me?
The potential for gammon.
Potentials of gammon is what you factor in to determine whether or not you have too many market losers or not. That's not it. I'll tell you the other reason that I give the cue. Yes, I don't know your name, sir.
Take it. My name's Dave.
Dave?
You want him to take it because you know your chances of winning make it worth doubling the stakes.
You know, I'm going to give you a point for that. That's pretty close to what I have in mind. I'm going to give the cue if I think he might drop. And just the opposite. Actually, it's just the opposite of that. If I know it's a take, and by the way, I'm in a chouette that I've been playing an average of 3-4 days a week for about 40 years. I've got a little bit of experience playing people for money and in chouettes. I know there's a couple guys that if it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and they're up 6 points and I give them a 4 cube, they're going to pass, even though it's a take. I'm going to give the cube because I'm pretty sure they're going to pass. And Extreme Gammon will help you with this. It tells you that if you give a bad cube that you shouldn't give, but if you can get a drop 10% of the time or more, it's right to give that cube. That's a number that I helped Xavier insist that we put into Extreme Gammon when we first started developing the program, to have that number. So if you think it's pretty complicated and scary position, I have people that I roll a double 6 and I get way ahead in the race and they go like this. They're going to drop that cube next time no matter what happens. But I'm going to fly the cube out there and grab the score sheet and start scoring it even before they say they're and I'm going to win. I'm going to win a point and steal money from these people. So the same thing is true in a match. If you think there's a pretty good chance, if you know you're playing somebody that's a chicken, if somebody is ahead in the match and you know they don't want to give away points, it's a volatile situation. Even if you say, I know it's just a take, they might not know it's a take and they might not agree. So those are the 2 reasons I would give a cube if I think it's right to take. If I think I might get a drop enough of the time to make up for my mistake, my technical mistake of dropping, and that's why my PR is 22 most of the time, because I'm doing this too much probably. But those are the 2 reasons. Let's go on. The market losers, you think you might drop. And don't forget reverse Woolsey's law. Who knows reverse Woolsey's law? Wow. John does, but I'm very proud of this one. Mike?
Simborg's law.
No, Simborg's law is a little different, but I
thought reverse Woolsey's law was Simborg's.
No, Simborg's law we'll get to in a minute. I was in Santa Fe with Kit Woolsey out to dinner, and I said, Kit, I just came up with a concept that I think is great. I want to call it reverse Woolsey's law. Can I have your permission? He says, it's great. It's just the reverse of Woolsey's law, and I'm sure other people have used the theory, but I put a name to it. If somebody doubles me, and I'm surprised, and I don't think it's a double, I know it's a take. So anytime you get a cube, put yourself in his shoes and say, would I double this? And if your answer is, geez, I don't know, then you know it's a take. That's a great way. These gut feelings that you have are going to help you in back end. I know that John Hagen has no guts. He uses his brain for everything. And Ed O'Loughlin just practices day after hour. But some of us have to go with our feelings because we're not that smart. And these feelings are going to guide you and help you. So now there are many approaches to getting to the right answer in back end. That's what's so great about this game. You don't have to know all these numbers and all these details that I'm telling you to play a really good game of backgammon. If you get some experience and playing experience, and some of these tools are going to get you there, no matter how much you know the numbers, it's going to help you. Let's go on. Number 4, if it's a take, use Hagen's law. When I first learned this game and studied, read all the books, nobody could really tell me how often I do lose my market or how much of a market loser I needed to know when to double until John O'Hagan taught me this, and now I teach it to everybody. Can anybody besides John O'Hagan tell me what O'Hagan's law is? Mary?
You have 25% or more of the time the market losing, you lose the market on the sequence, not just your roll, but then what they roll.
All right, what Mary said is if you lose your market 25% of the time, that's right for money in match play. Yes?
But there's also a corollary. It's also reduce my anti-joke.
Well, Mary said that.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, Julius said you got to watch. Well, if you lose your market, go ahead and hit the slide. And you tell me if I say this wrong. If you lose your market in a money game or normal match score, 25% of the time, that's 9 out of 36 rolls net. That's what Julius is pointing out and what Mary's pointing out. You have to take your good rolls minus your bad rolls, and you also have to look at your opponent's good rolls and bad rolls. If you're going to lose your market about 25% of the time, provided that the rest of the time is not going to be too big a swing in either direction, it's probably right to double. And we've tested this with hundreds of positions, and there are, in most kinds of situations and positions, O'Hagan's law is pure genius. It works. If I can show you positions where you can test it and see exactly 9 market losers, and Extreme Gammon says it's a double by .002. Did you have a question, Marty?
Yeah, so my question regards the sequences where you lose equity compared to your expected value.
I'll show you that in the next slide.
Yeah, so because when you say net, I don't know what net.
I'm going to show you what net means. That's a great question. It's a great question. Like I said earlier, you're smarter than you look. You anticipated my next slide. Let's go to the next slide. Here's an example of O'Hagan's law. Red is on roll. This is a prime versus prime position. The first thing I know, and for prime versus prime positions, if it's a normal prime versus prime, I use what I call Stick's law, because Stick taught this to me and pounded it home. all normal prime versus primes are takes. So I know when I use Woolsey's law that blue has a take here. Again, money game or a normal match score, 7 away, 7 away, 11 away, 11 away. I know it's a take. Why do I know it's a take? There's a reason. I can see a light at the end of the tunnel from blue. I can see that if red doesn't roll a 6 and has to break, then blue's got a reasonable chance to win this game. The acid test is when I put it into extreme gammon, it'll tell me that blue almost always will win one of these games at least 30% of the time. Now, the exception would be if you get gammon too much, but in these positions, if you don't get gammon more than a net of 18% with a gammon value of 0.5, you're always going to have a take point higher than 21.5. And if you just lost me here, be my guest. I was lost this for 10 years when I heard this, but I understand it now. You'll have enough to take if you don't get gammon too much in a prime versus prime. So we know it's a take. So we use Woolsey's law. We know it's a take. How do you know when to double? I use Hagen's law. Can you tell me a roll that would lose your market here? Somebody, what would lose your market if you're red? Sean.
86.
86. How many 6s are there? 11. You're going to lose your market 11 times if you roll a 6. You roll a red rolls a 6. I don't care what blue does. He's passing next time. You've lost your market. That's 11 market losers. But what's bad for red? What's horrible for red? Not you, Sean. Somebody else. What's a terrible roll for red? Yes, yes, sir.
Double 4.
Double 4s is terrible. He has to break his board and open up, and if he does that, blue probably wins this game. Is there anything else that's bad? Julius? Huh? 5-4 doesn't cost him the game. 5-4, he breaks his board. Double threes. Double threes. Double 3 and double 4 are the two destroyer rolls. So in this case, your net market losers for red are 9. You've got 11 great rolls and 2 what I call market loser rolls, 2 anti-market losers. That's a net of 9. Now you still have to look at blues rolls. Yes, there are some. If red doesn't roll, red could roll a 2-1, which is pretty good. Red could roll a 3-2 and break the point, and then blue could roll double 4 or something bad. But blue doesn't have that many, and they sort of even off. Those other rolls are sort of in the middle. This really comes close to John O'Hagan's 9 market losers. Let's see what the cube action is according to Extreme Gammon. When we come up with about 9 net market losers, it says it's a good solid double because you have those 9 market losers, plus you have some bad rolls for blue when you don't roll the market losers. If you take the blue spare on the 3-point and put it to the 6-point, blue has an even better position, and then it's a double by, then it really is almost exactly 9 market losers, and it's a double by 0.004. It's right there. O'Hagan's law works super for these kinds of positions and many others. Now, on this other side of the slide here, I have gone to dice distribution, which if you have Extreme Gammon and you don't use dice distribution, you're not getting your money's worth. It's an incredible thing. It shows you every single good roll and how good it is, and every single bad roll and how good it is. And if you could read this, every one of these, like, where you go off the charts to the plus, is a 6. One of these are 11 good numbers, and here's those 2 bad numbers, double 3 and double 4. And all the rest of your rolls are sort of neutral, as you can see, sort of in the middle. It fits O'Hagan's law perfectly. Now, I have learned in all kinds of different positions over the board within 30 seconds to sort of estimate how many good rolls, how many bad rolls, and nothing has worked better. I used to use Roberti's law, which was really good for racing games, and it still is. If you think you're going to lose your market, if you roll a little better than average roll, and he rolls a little worse than average roll, and that's fine for a racing game. You get into a highly volatile game, what the heck is an average roll? What's better than an average roll? So you can go nuts trying to figure that out. But counting market losers using O'Hagan's law really, really works. It's one of the very best tools I've ever had, and one of the smartest things I ever did. I was taking lessons from Perry. We started the Backgammon Learning Center. The first thing we did was we brought out Stick and John O'Hagan, and the two of them, with the material that they've helped us with and put it together, it's been incredible. Of course, Mochi knows a little bit about the game, and he's added some, and Michi, and I won't, and Dennis Culpepper, and some other really great players. I've got a whole new strategy that I'm using thanks to David Presser. That it's an old strategy that I threw away that he's proven to be works very, very well. PRAT. I'll get into that in a second. Let's move on. If you are leading or trailing, you have to fight your emotions, and I talked about this a little bit before. But most of the time, if you're ahead in the match and you're thinking about passing because of the score, you're probably wrong, unless you've really studied the game. Don't use your gut, because if you're ahead in the match, you have too much fear of your opponent catching up and losing. And like I told you earlier, in many scores, when you're ahead, you actually have a lower take point than your opponent has. You should actually be taking more when you're ahead and taking more. And you're not really taking more chances because the risk reward favors you, again, unless there's gammons. If those scores, if you're going to get gammoned a bunch, yes, you're going to drop faster because your gammon price is higher. But in a racing game or games where you have a nice holding game and there's very few gammons, when you're ahead, you're probably making the mistake of dropping too much. And if you're behind, you're probably making the mistake of giving the cube too much and dropping too fast. So you have to fight your emotions, learn these numbers, understand what they are and why they are. It's going to change your game and make you a better player. Now, you can become a decent backgammon player without any of this knowledge. I know many people who don't know anything about these numbers that can play a pretty good game of backgammon. What do I mean by pretty good? If you watch them play and you put all their matches and games into extreme gammon, they're going to play around 9, 10 PR. You can get that good by playing without all this information. But when you want to start getting down to the more championship and better levels, you want to start getting down to 6 PR and 5 PR, you've got to have a good understanding and knowledge of this. And when you want to get as good as the people like John Hagen, who plays at 3.2 every day, plays a 13-point match against extreme gammon. We have Victor and some of the top players in the world here that can play at these lower levels. You have to understand, even if you don't know the exact numbers, you have to understand the concepts of when you're going to take the pass faster or slower. So fight your emotions. When you learn the information, you'll do better. Let's go on. Number 6. Next one. Oh, I covered this. Oh, by the way, the exception is 2-away, 4-away again. If you're leading 2-away, 4-away, yes, you are going to drop faster, especially if there's gammons. You're going to double faster. And here's a good example that most people, and I use this all the time. Your red is losing. He needs 4 points to win the match, and blue needs 2 points to win the match. Red has an opening roll of a 4-2, and blue splits with a 5-1. It's a double. You would never, ever dream of doubling this at other scores than normal scores. But the second that you double this, the gammons that you win, which is 18%, are worth 1.0 in your favor. And the gammons that you lose, these 11 or 12% gammons that you lose, are worth 0. So you gain huge equity with the cube. Now, if blue hadn't split, and by the way, he was supposed to, even though he's going to get doubled, but if he hadn't split and he had an anchor, you wouldn't double because your gammons aren't that high. So at these scores, it's highly sensitive to know that you would double in this position very, very quickly. And let's go to the next slide. If you are the player who is 2-away and you're being doubled and there's some gammon risk, you're going to drop super fast. Marty had to think a while before he took that cube from me. He was right to take it, I'm sure. We'll see it because he had enough game left. But I'm not positive. I thought maybe that might be a pass. That's one of the reasons I gave you the cube. Well, I used Woolsey's law. But there was real gammon risk for Marty there, and I put some real pressure on him with the cube. So here's a cube where blue would take this cube in a heartbeat at most scores, and at 2-away, 4-away, it's a 0.668 error to pass, to take the cube. A monster error. Let's go on. Simborg's law. Mike, you brought it up earlier. What's Simborg's law?
I thought it was reverse Woolsey's law.
Okay, so I'm very proud of this. I guarantee you this is not my idea, but I put my name to it because I hadn't read it anywhere. Simborg's law, I stole the idea from Woolsey's law. What it is basically is be a sadist. Be a nasty person when you're playing backgammon. When you're playing any game one-on-one, I don't care if you're playing tennis or wrestling or ping pong, you're trying to make your opponent unhappy. Do the same thing in backgammon. If I'm not sure when to double bet, if I'm not sure whether I'm going to double or not, I'm going to ask myself how I would feel if I were him. Do I want this cube? Would it feel really uncomfortable to get this cube? If the answer is yes, I'm going to give the cube. That's good. If I'm on the fence with the other guys, first I use all the numbers, the logic. But if I'm still not sure, and I see a real sad look on their face because I just rolled double sixes, and I think they might not feel real happy about getting this cube, that helps me decide whether to give the cube. And if I think, wow, if I were them, this cube wouldn't bother me. This is an easy take. I'm probably going to hold the cube. So I do the opposite, go ahead, of what they want to do. Put yourself in your shoes, keep going. And either way, this applies to checker play as well. If I'm thinking about hitting or running, and now I can't decide, should I hit or should I run? I ask myself, if I'm playing John, what would John not want me to do if I were him? And what that does, when you put yourself in your opponent's shoes, you all of a sudden you see the whole game from a different perspective. You've been playing the red checkers the whole game. You have no idea what it feels like to be the blue checkers. And all of a sudden you can see you really don't want to get hit here. And before I was looking at it from the Reds' point of view, I wasn't sure if I should hit or run. So I know which play is better because I feel that in my gut, if I were John, that I'm praying you won't hit. So this will help you get to the right checker play and the cue play. I think it's a great tool. I'm very proud of it. Let's go on. Learn the special reference positions and tools for each type of game. I promise you, I was shocked the first time Howard Ring was one of my mentors, and I showed a position to Howard. He said, "Oh, you get Gammon here 16%." I said, "What? How the heck could he know that?" Albert Einstein, you could show a position to Albert Einstein, and he would not be, and tell him the rules of the game, he wouldn't know you'd have 16% Gammons here. How is he so smart? How are all these great players estimating wins and Gammons? So it's not because they have figured it out and counted the rolls. There's too many rolls to go. They have reference positions. They've looked at holding games, and they know that this type of game gets Gammon about 15%, and this type of game gets Gammon 22%. So you've studied basic reference position. Well, Michi, I believe, has 7,000 reference positions in his computer that he studies 70 a day, and none of us can remember all these reference positions, but Michi can. How does he do it? Well, John O'Hagan and I published an article 9 months ago or a year ago called Bunching, how you bunch ideas together, and it helps you remember them. So if you look at only holding games, and you know that a 1-point holding game with 2 checkers back gets Gammon about 15%, and 3 checkers back is 35%, and 4 checkers back is 50%, then you can easily remember that. I just said it right, because if I can show you on if the opponent is on the other side and I've got a closed board, that's about how much you'll get Gammon for the 1 point. I'm no genius. I'm as smart as Howard Ring was when he spit out that number, just because I've looked at the reference positions together. I now know when you move to the 2 point that you get Gammon, instead of 15%, you get Gammon closer to 12% on the 2 point. And you get Gammon closer to 8% on the 3 point with 2 checkers. So by bunching these things, you can remember these numbers, you can apply them, and then I know that at this score, that's a drop. At this score, it's not even a double. So you can apply these numbers very, very well. It's too hard to learn everything about backgammon, and after you've learned all the essentials of the cube, and I've just given you the essentials, if you break the game down into smaller pieces and study them in pieces, that's the way to learn the game, and that's the way we teach it. Well, I'm very proud again. I came up with the idea, and if you get Walter Trice's boot camp, he uses the same idea. Walter and I talked about this at length before he wrote the book, and I think it's a great book. I'm sure most of you agree. There are 8 basic types of games that every game breaks into after the opening few rolls. Every game becomes a race, or it's a holding game, or a back game, or a priming game, or a containment game, an end game, general action game, I missed one, blitzing game. So every game is one of those 8 types of games. So we take each game one by one and say, when do you double this kind of a back game, a 1-2 back game? You double it very differently from when you double a 2-4 back game or a 3-5 double holding game. Each one of these have different rules of thumb, and I've memorized what point you double. Each one of them is real easy. It's not that hard, and I'm going to get it right over the board. And I know how to adjust it if Gammons are worth more or less. So we take each type of game, and we have special tools that we use in addition to reference position. For racing, my 2 favorite tools are the Keith count with some adjustments, and EPC. EPC is effective pip counting when all the checkers are in or close to in. There's another Walter Trice innovation. Boy, I miss Walter Trice. What a great guy. And I helped start a fund for him and his family. We raised over $30,000 for his nieces and nephews. His book is the best-selling book since McGrill and Roberti's books, and he's still with us today. And I just want to thank Walter for all he's done for the game. The EPC and the Keith count is based on the Trice formula. It's just a takeoff on that. Tom Keith took the Trice formula, changed it a little bit. These are things you need to learn. I'm not going to teach you this today. If you don't know them, you're not going to be a great player. This is going to help you become a great player. There are some other things that John O'Hagan uses that no normal person would use, like the ward and the Tusik and other stupid stuff like that, that over the board, it's driving me nuts, but only John and a couple of other people use them anyway. Let's go on. You've got a holding game. There's a good reference positions for holding game. There's a rule of 4. I'm not going to tell you what that is today. We don't have time. I'm going to finish in 6 minutes because I don't want to hold up this incredible tournament because I have a chance to win it. So the rule of 4, it tells you exactly when you should double when your opponent has a 5-point or a 7-point holding game. Works every time. Why not learn it? Next, blitzing. There are 7 basic blitzing reference positions. If you know them by heart, I can tell you that if my opponent splits with a 5-2, I roll a double 5, and he comes in on my 5-point, I know that I gammon him. I gammon him around 30% of the time, and he wins the game about 40% of the time. I know it's a small double. I know if he comes in on the 2-point, it's no double. If he comes in on the 4-point, it's borderline. I know the percentages. I'm not a genius. You memorize these by bunching and learning them in order, and learn these reference positions, and you count the checkers in the zone, which most of you know. The number of checkers you have available to start blitzing and going after your opponent is a big factor in how you play the game, whether you're blitzing at all. If you have 9 checkers in the zone, you might have a blitz. You have 10 checkers in the zone, go get them, baby. That's a good time to blitz, 10, 11, and that's going to affect your cube action as well, again, depending on where your opponent's checkers are and a little bit of what's going on the other side of the board. But again, learn each of these separately, and you can become an expert. It's not that hard to do one at a time. It's hard to learn everything. That's why people who play against Extreme Gammon or play games online and then look at all their mistakes, they learn very little that they're going to retain. But doing them one at a time, that'll do it for you. Very quickly, priming, Stick's Law and Hagen's Law I talked about. Back games, it's all about, really, back games, I don't use O'Hagan's Law, I use Woolsey's Law, but I use references. What's the timing and how many points do I have to clear? It tells me if it's a double, tells me if it's a take. Containment games, there's a rule of 4 there too. If my opponent has 8 checkers off and I hit him and he's got 8 checkers off, I've got to have 4 checkers off and he's still got to be on the bar, and it's a double take. I just know that rule of 4, and it works almost every time depending on the position. And if he's got 9 checkers off, I've got to have 5 checkers off. And if he's got 6 checkers off, I only need to have 2 checkers off. The difference of 4. Knowing that makes me an expert at the cube in those kinds of games, just by knowing for sure these little simple rules for each type of game. End games, there's a whole different kinds of rules there, but we already talked about 4-roll, 4-roll, 3-roll, 3-roll. You already know all about that. How do you apply the different match scores? That's why you need to know the take point. But also, one of the #1 things I think about in an end game is whether or not my opponent can get in a recube. Just this morning, I gave a lesson to a very, very fine player that didn't know the Jacoby paradox. And the Jacoby paradox will show you a position where the worse when your opponent's in a worse position, you don't redouble. Then when he's in a bad, when you have more wins, even more wins, you don't double because he has a redouble. So knowing whether your opponent has a redouble or not is a critical factor in end games. And then in general action games, gammon adjusted take points, which John is the master at. I come up with a new approach with that. And I also, thanks to David Presser, who's become, David was recently with in the BMAD, he's a very top ranked grandmaster, but he's the #2, he's one of our teachers, I'm very proud to have him. He's the #2 in the cube in the world. After a fellow, is Petco in the room? Petco's not here, he's out to dinner. He doesn't need to learn. Petco's #1 in the world on the cube, and David Presser's #2. I said, David, how in the world did you get so good at the cube in such a short period of time? He's a young man, hasn't been playing backgammon that long, got a master's degree, doing all kinds of other things, and all of a sudden he's #2 in the world in the cube. He says, well, he's done all the things we talked about. He studied everything. He knows all the numbers. He uses Woolsey's Law. He uses O'Hagan's Law, but he also uses PRAT, and he's a very big believer in it. For the last few months, I've been studying it, and I've used it at least a dozen times so far in this tournament. Position, race, and threats. And by analyzing the position that way will help you decide if you have a double and if the other side has a take. So my point is, I can't teach you all this today if you don't learn these things and do it this way and bunch it and organize it this way. You are doing it the hard way. There's a great saying, does he have 20 years of experience or 1 year of experience 20 times? There are players at my club that have been playing for 20, 30 years and are making the same mistakes and are not growing because they're not breaking down the game and studying it in pieces. Any questions? I'm done. Thank you so much all for coming. We'll have a drawing later and we'll announce the winner of the prize. Michelle, thank you for streaming.
You're welcome.
that's the day for the other house.
Okay, I'll get this first. This is this Mike? Mike Miller.
No, you never told me.
It's Mike Miller. I thought yeah.
You never told me.
No, I was.
Oh, my face.
And the question was the people that answered this
Which Mike was the Mike?
this night. The kid
Oh,
that
yeah.
was sitting right here. And then there was a kid over there that you gave. No,
I can tell. What's his name?
I don't know his last name.
Michelle, do you think it came close?
Yes, and now I'm showing the whole crowd that dispersed.
Well, that's great.
It's a huge crowd.
Well, it's the time. It's the
Yeah. Usually at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.